Content warning, this episode deals with the subject of rape, so be aware of that.
Year ago, the Planet Express crew partook in a doomed journey on the starship Titanic. During that traumatizing event, Amy hit it off with a charming lieutenant named Kif Kroger, personal assistant to Zap Brannigan. Ever since, Amy has regularly received phone calls from an unknown number in which the caller hangs up before saying anything. Meanwhile, Kif confesses to Zap that he is in love with Amy, but doesn't have the courage to ask her out on a proper date. When Zap learns that Amy knows Leela, for whom he still bears a cross of his own, he promises to help. Zap asks Leela if she and Amy will accompany him and Kif on a double date, and as a favor to Amy, Leela accepts. The two couples meet for their date at a fancy restaurant aboard a space liner, but Zap's boorish suggestions for pickup lines cause Kif to greatly offend Amy. But this sour date turns even more disastrous as Zap's wretched karaoke performance drives all of the restaurant's other patrons and staff to flee. Zap attempts to pilot the restaurant to take the girls home, but instead crashes it on a mysterious planet, Amazonia, where they are captured by locals, a race of giant tribal women. Fry and Bender soon depart for Amazonia in order to rescue their friends, Zap, but are also captured. As the Amazonians take their prisoners to stand judgment before their leader, one of them asks what men exist for. Amy explains, and in the hushed tones the Amazonians respond that they have only heard stories of the act she is describing, which they know only as Snoo Snoo. Soon our heroes, and Zap, find themselves face to face with the Amazonian leader, a massive supercomputer called the Femputer. The Amazonians claimed it arrived mysteriously one day and was put in charge due to its wisdom. The Femputer demands to know why there are men on Amazonia and refuses to accept their defense that it was an accident. The women are freed, as is Bender due to his lack of masculine anatomy, but for Fry, Kif, and Zap, the Femputer sentenced them to death by Snoo Snoo. Their hearts torn between excitement and horror, the men are taken away to be snoo-snoozed repeatedly by the entire population of Amazonia. As they are dragged off, Kif confesses to Amy that the one calling her over the past year was him, and he was simply too much of a coward to speak, for he is in love with her, and Amy realizes that she loves him too. And so, Amy and Leela resolve to save their friends. And Zap. The Amazonians are too large and strong for Leela to fight head-on, so the two of them convince Bender to instead reprogram the Femputer so it will revoke its previous order. But as he goes to commiserate with the Femputer, he discovers that it's actually a fake computer operated by a fembot who came to rule Amazonia after escaping her chauvinistic home planet. Meanwhile, Amy manages to rescue Kif on her own, but the pair are chased into the Femputer's chamber. As the Amazonians corner them and ask the fembot what punishment is suitable for this transgression, they are shocked to hear the Femputer order the release of all the prisoners. Bender and the fembot have become romantically entangled themselves, and the fembot doesn't want to hurt her lover's friends. Or Zap. And so our heroes, and Zap, return to Earth, where Fry and Zap receive medical treatment for their snoo-snoo-induced injuries. In the end, the battle of the sexes was resolved only by the awakening of love. Welcome to Space Podcast 3000, where the future is in the past.
So, welcome to Season 3.
Hi!
We're starting this season off with a bang.
Oh god, that was terrible.
So yeah, Amazon Women in the Mood.
Probably one of the most iconic episodes of this series.
Yes, this is the source of many memes. And honestly, this is an episode where nobody comes off looking good. So once you accept that everybody in this episode is pretty awful, then you'll have a lot more fun with it.
Everyone's an asshole.
Yeah, like this is one of those episodes where Fry is uncharacteristically misogynist for most of it, and the jokes it's used for aren't even all that funny. I mean, at least it's satisfying watching the guys get repeatedly beaten for their sexism.
But, I mean, you can also look at it from a writer standpoint where, like, all the Amazons are the most vapid, stereotypical, this is what a society ruled by women would be like, kind of cynical look at it, that's obviously the joke as well, where it's like, no, that's absolutely not how it would work.
I guess, but like, so when you actually look at it, I do feel the need to point out that this whole trope of like a primitive tribal culture who live in straw huts and speak in broken English with all the furs and the piercings and the bones in the hair, that carries just so much historically racist baggage. Like, I get there's probably no deliberate racist intent here, and it's mostly...
It's visual shorthand. It's a shorthand that a lot of people recognize as primitive society. So you really can't combat that too well.
Like, yeah, I get it's just an homage to these old pulp stories that use this trope, but, like, they don't even really subvert it in any particularly clever way or anything. It's mostly just played entirely straight, just with that added layer of stereotypically just the most surface level feminine stuff. That said, a planet of all women, especially, like, strong women, that is, like, the lesbian dream.
I mean, you're not wrong. Although, there are some stereotypes coming with that as well. I can think of, like, stuff with the Gerudo, especially.
Yeah, the Gerudo Society is another one that's just always kind of been weird in Legend of Zelda, where it's like every 1,000 years a man is born or something. It's like, how
100.
do they reproduce? How does that even work?
They
intermarry with the Hylians.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think they just kind of incorporate men from all other places into their culture. I don't know how the Amazonians do it, though, unless their biology is different.
Yeah.
I mean, technically they're aliens.
They can have snoo, so obviously there's something going on there.
Speaking of which, like, this episode feels like a whole plot reference to something, but I have no idea what. But Death by Snoo has gotta be a reference to that one awful old joke that I am not going to be repeating here because it's both extremely racist and extremely homophobic. But you know the joke I'm talking about, I'm sure. And in the Femputer, at least, though, just at least kind of reminds me of the computer Landru from that one Star Trek episode that I can't remember the name of, with a little bit of the Wizard of Oz thrown in there.
Yeah, it is got the little Wizard of Oz.
Pay no attention to the fembot behind the curtain.
So, like, I one thing that I do want to bring up, one of the misogynist jokes brought here, was just at the making fun of women's comedy. And, like, they laugh at the idea of female comedy. I just want to point out that one of the funniest bits of stand-up I have ever seen came from a female comedian, Marcia Belsky. Look up her bit about the astronaut Sally Ride. It is hysterical.
Well, of course, like, the joke here is, like, that... I mean, even mentioning that it's a joke really is kind of a joke in and of itself. It's kind of like, do you notice that male comedy and female stand-up comedy is different? And it's like, okay, what do you do with that joke? They don't really do anything with the joke. They're just saying that it's different. And then the men there are like, in other words, it sucks. And which, again, that is the joke, is that they are playing into the male stereotype of hating anything with the female stereotype. So that's what I'm saying, where everybody in this episode comes off terribly. Like, both sides are really pretty bad in dealing with the stereotypes.
It's kind of generic, honestly. I don't think they did anything particularly interesting with the trope.
Yeah, really, they just kind of do it for a lot for the jokes, and then they get mad at you for laughing at the jokes. I don't really know exactly what joke they're going for in this case.
Yeah, the entire Amazonia section of the episode is just the same joke, and it's not even a particularly funny joke, in my opinion. And there's also stuff like the bust-shaped temple with the braziers and the nipples. That just made me groan.
It's not interesting at all. It's just, ha ha, women have boobies. Not all women have boobies.
And there's even a little bit of homophobia in this episode for no reason, like Kif reacting negatively to the death by Snoo Snoo verdict, and he's just like, what are you, gay? Just like, damn
no,
it,
it's
Zap.
the fact that he doesn't want to die, but no, it's because
Kif has the most reasonable reaction.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because Brannigan is like, what, you what are you, gay? You don't want to die by sex?
It's not just a death sentence. It's rape. It's literally rape.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Is exactly what
they
this
are
is.
going to be raped to death, but because it's with men, it's funny. Ha ha ha.
God, I hate that double standard.
Yeah, which, I mean, that's exactly what I'm saying. Once you accept that everybody in this episode is terrible, it's a pretty funny episode. But again, that's kind of a hard thing to accept for some people.
Well, let's just be upfront about something. Rape is one of those things you really should never joke about.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to say that necessarily that, oh, there are categories that should be off limits of jokes forever for anyone. But, like, so many people have gone through it and been traumatized by it. And it's really something that if you're going to joke about it, you really do need to have a lot more tact than this.
Yeah, it really does use it as a cheap gag, which of course is the standard really is the double standards. Like if it's a joke about male rape, then it's funny. Especially if it's female on male. If it's male on male, then it's like, then that's still getting into the category of that's not good, but female on male, like a lot of them argue that it can't even happen, but no, that happens.
Now, you bring that up. There are actually countries in the world where, legally speaking, a woman cannot commit rape.
Right.
Yeah.
Like in the UK, I believe, the legal definition of rape requires male genitalia.
Really? The
Yeah.
UK of all places.
Let's talk about some of the jokes that we did like. The first half of this episode, ironically enough, was pretty good with the idea of the half date.
Yeah, oh
just
god.
That as a
The half
concept
date.
is just hilarious.
Well, we'll meet you for half of dinner and half of a movie. Just, God, there's so many little jokes in the first few minutes of this episode. Like Amy's tiny cell phone. It's like a freaking doll's cell phone.
It's like Zoolander.
Like, it's funny because, back in 2001 when this aired, the idea of such a teeny phone, probably seemed like a logical conclusion where phones just kept getting smaller and smaller. Then
people realized that you can watch videos on your phone, and phones started getting bigger.
Yeah, now you have smartphones just getting bigger and bigger every generation to get, larger screens, and the trend is reversed. And maybe now in the year 3000 there'll be a smartphone as big as a TV.
They'll just have hollow phones.
I mean, smart TVs exist, though. That's their own issue.
Oh, wow, we're already there. I also like the subtle callback gag of when Kif has his flashback to what happened after the episode of Flight to Remember, and you can see Bender in the background throwing away the Countess's bracelet.
Right.
Oh.
I think this episode, more than the previous two, is much more reliant on having knowledge of, like, this season in particular. I think this season, much more than the previous ones, are much more reliant on having seen previous episodes in the series. Because there are a lot more callbacks. There is the whole thing with the Titanic and everything and driving it into the black hole. It's like oftentimes this would be kind of a throwaway backstory, but this was something that happened in a previous episode. So they're starting to kind of call back to these things. And I like seeing that sort of continuity in this stuff.
Well, Arrested Development did the same sort of thing in its only good season, again, season 3, where by this point you have enough established stuff that you can call back to things.
Yeah.
And actually with other background gags, I really like the joke of the restaurant coat check having a 25-cent surcharge on each sleeve over 9.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that joke from The Simpsons, $5 per axle.
Did you see how many arms the first guy there had? I wonder what his total surcharge was.
I think there's about 14 arms on that coat, so it's still 25 cents in the future is nothing.
Yeah, the restaurant was great. Like, Morbo on karaoke is surprisingly hilarious, both just conceptually, but also Maurice LaMarche's voice performance just elevates the joke.
I know.
And then there's Zap's Shatner-esque spoken
Shatner
word
prestige,
karaoke. Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
God, I was losing it at that point. Zap was great in this episode. So many great lines. You win again, Gravity.
Gravity will always win.
The spirit is willing, but the flesh is spongy and bruised. Or one that was just inexplicably funny and probably the best line from the episode to me. She's built like a steakhouse, but she handles like a bistro.
The fact that he's driven restaurants before.
No, there isn't a restaurant built that he can't fly and crash.
Yeah.
So there was also the brief subplot of Zoidberg with his replacement shell, which feels like a waste.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they just didn't think that they could do much with the concept, because they do kind of go for as many jokes as they could have with that. I don't know, I might have been funny to see him in a different kind of shell.
Yeah, there was definitely more you could have done with that. It seemed like they were building up to a B plot, but it was really just like 2 scenes.
And it doesn't even end, it ends exactly where it began, but they could have just as easily have him find a similar shell and like hand wave it away, but no, he finds literally the exact same shell that he got rid of because it was already too tight, so he didn't really even accomplish anything.
I mean, I guess the joke is he's an idiot and he got a free meal eating that raccoon. Poor raccoon. But I did like the bit of Hermes just telling him that the Planet Express health plan only covers one kind of replacement shell, and it's just this awful looking generic thing. Honestly, fuck the health insurance industry and private healthcare in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things that should not even be a variable in this situation.
Right? Like, I'm pretty sure we've talked about this before.
Yeah, we've talked about a lot of this stuff. It was season 3, more late stage capitalism rants.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
And crabs typically just grow their shells back.
Yeah, well, they molt out the old one and then they grow a new one. That's standard with most arthropods.
I guess the Decapodians are different? I don't know.
They could be like hermit crabs.
Could be.
I wonder if it would be inappropriate to point out that the Jewish-coded doctor ends up with a barcode on him.
I didn't even think of that. God.
Which I'm sure wasn't intentional.
Most certainly not, but wow.
If they really wanted to make that sort of joke, they would have put it on his arm, but that would have been way too obvious.
Oh god, that would have been in terrible taste.
Yeah.
No, it's just a shell that says shell on it. It's like, well, if you're going to be a commodity, then there you go.
I wonder if the barcode actually reads shell.
I considered getting my reader out and taking a look at that. Because it seemed short enough.
So, there's one other thing that I wanted to bring up. I like Kif and Amy a lot, but the way that Kif makes up with her near the end of the episode feels really rushed and forced. Just like, it's like 30 seconds, and suddenly they're good again.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, did Kif really even do anything that bad to her?
Well, given how upset she was, it just seems weird that it would be resolved so easily, you know?
Yeah, and especially the creeping on the phone for a year now, like I understand being nervous, but that's a lot.
I think it's part of the fact that she does like him back. She was just kind of waiting. She just kind of needed confirmation that he wasn't actually this way. He didn't need to win her over. He'd already really won her over. She just needed to make sure that he wasn't actually this guy that she thought he was.
I mean, that's true. But the whole phone thing is a little bit, from her perspective, it definitely, like, understandably why she was so freaked out initially.
Yeah.
Just because, like, imagine if you got a call, like, regularly, multiple times a day, potentially, for a year, and there's just nothing on the other end, just someone breathing heavily, and that would be pretty disturbing.
Yeah, I'd stop picking up at one point.
True, but, I mean, the fact is that she, like she said, she liked him too, so finding out about that is, she understands that this is difficult for him. She's making an effort to be in this relationship as well. Like, even the fact, like, she would have liked him anyway, even if that wasn't him doing this. She just wanted a confirmation that this is actually, they have a reason for this to try to work out. She's not looking for a reason to get out of this relationship. She's looking for a reason to get into it.
That's definitely true.
That's fair.
And I really love their relationship, and I think they're really cute. It just, I don't know, the resolution just didn't feel all that earned to me.
When you're in love, you overlook a lot of other things.
I just mean from a narrative perspective. I mean, I guess when you only have 22 minutes and you spent so much of it on jokes that weren't all that funny, honestly, you know, you kind of have to rush the conclusion.
Yeah, which is a shame. But
I mean, at least they get some really good episodes later.
yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of really good episodes in this season. Just in general, but also, yeah, Kif and Amy have some great episodes as well.
Now, one thing that I'm going to tell you guys that might sound weird is just how well regarded this episode is. I know you pointed out at the beginning that it's a really iconic episode, but looking back at like the past 15 minutes of us talking about it, it seems like we really didn't like a lot of it. But yeah, this episode actually got an Emmy nomination.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? This one? Not Poplars?
This particular episode got an Emmy nom, yeah. I don't know if the problem with Poplars did, but hang on, I can look that up. Problem with Poplars. It did not get any award nominations. Amazon Women in the Mood, however, was nominated for an Emmy in 2001 for Outstanding Animated Program for programming less than 1 hour, but it lost to the Simpsons episode HOMR.
That's the one where he gets the crayon in his brain, or removed from his brain.
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
I believe that is the one.
Though in the end, award shows are usually meaningless anyway.
True. Well, the Emmy nominations, I believe those are also related to, they have to submit it as a, they have to submit it, don't they? They have to submit an episode for consideration.
I think so. It's weird.
I believe that's how it works with the Oscars. So they specifically chose this episode to be representative of what they put out that year. Like, this was an episode that they're particularly proud of. If that's how it works.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that the people who vote on the awards, who decide the awards, they're also the ones who decide which ones to accept for nomination.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that this got a nom, despite, you know, less than half of the episode really being especially great, is just weird. But on top of that, multiple sources and polls consistently place it as one of the most well-regarded episodes of the show. Like, according to this, IGN, for instance, like, claimed that it was the best episode of Futurama.
That seems a bit high. I can think of a lot of episodes that are way, way better than this one. I mean,
right?
Like I said, I didn't hate this episode. I thought there was a lot of really funny stuff in it, but it is very, very surface level jokes, which may be the thing a lot of people like about it. Is jokes that really are very obvious. And it is they do kind of come really rapid fire once they do reach the Amazonia planet. But it's the kind of jokes that you are the kind of acceptable for people that are not necessarily into sci-fi, who just want the kind of base level male-female jokes and that really kind of basic stuff that is still funny. Like I said, once you accept that all the people in this episode are horrible and like the writing behind it is horrible, or that it's based on some really awful stereotypes, but to its credit, it makes fun of those stereotypes on both sides.
I still think it's still really generic and, like, as you said, surface level. It doesn't really do anything besides make these stereotypes just be stereotypes. Doesn't subvert them in any meaningful way. It just feels like a cheap shot, you know?
Yeah, a lot of the jokes in this episode you could basically put in like any sitcom. None of it is really depends on it being Futurama, and like it is very generic surface level jokes. Like, that's not why you want to watch Futurama. You want to come here for those wild speculative fiction parodies.
True, which, I mean, they do a very similar, they do an episode similar to this in terms of like gender roles in a much more future episode.
That said, as you've been pointing out, it is really funny at the beginning. Like, the half double date especially is really freaking funny. But once they get to Amazonia, it really goes downhill. So basically, the first 8 minutes of this episode are really good, and the rest is pretty dull. So it's just kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah.
We'll meet you for one half of an episode. Thank you for listening to Space Podcast 3000. Your three voices of the future are Nova Altman, Doug Hancox, and Eden Valerie. The theme music is Voxel Revolution by Kevin MacLeod. You can support the show and listen to new episodes a full week early at patreon.com/spacepod3k. Follow us on Twitter at spacepod3k. Be sure to join us next episode as the Planet Express crew go on a fantastic voyage in Parasite's Lost.